Alright guys, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the Lucas Girling brake system, which is basically a hydraulic over hydraulic. It works similarly to air brakes, except it uses hydraulic pressure using ATF fluid ran off of a power steering pump. These brakes are notorious for leaking. I've heard people call them Lucas Girling brakes. I've heard people call them Lucas wet brakes. They've got a pretty bad rep, but my system's working okay for now. You know, if I had to do it over again, I probably would have found something with air brakes. There's something pretty important on these brakes that they didn't know about when they manufactured them, that people have found out later on. So I want to show you this, basically this check valve that I put in, which will cut down a lot of your brake leak, depending on where it's at. But I'm going to dig into this and I'll show you what I did. Okay, so I'm going to crawl under here and try not to get too dirty. Okay, so I'm going to switch his sides. I'm going to switch it to the driver's side. So, do you see this pattern in the tire right here? So, that pattern is from leaking brake fluid. The brake fluid comes out of this hole right here, one of the inspection ports, okay? And so what's happening is that there's leakage on the wheel cylinders, which is coming down in there. Now, granted, you could also have gear oil coming out of there from the differential if you have a bad seal. But in this case, it was not gear oil, it was brake fluid. And the brake fluid was seeping around the wheel cylinders. And so what we did is they make a valve called an RC01 valve. And we'll put a picture up of what this valve looks like. It's under $100. And what that does is it keeps 5 to 10 pounds of residual pressure on these rear brakes. What they have found is that no pressure on the rear brakes from the vehicle sitting creates a situation where the seals suck in too much and there's drainage around the seals. And so you're supposed to replace these, you're supposed to add this RC01 valve when you replace the brakes. I haven't replaced these brakes. However, I did have them apart and inspected them. And the seals look okay. And so in my instance, you can see now there used to be dripping brake fluid here. There is not anymore, and neither is there on that side. They were both doing it. So there's still some wetness on the tire from it just being recently fixed, or some pattern on the tire from where you can tell it was going. But yeah, so let me show you this RC01 valve. And I'll show you where I spliced it in. Okay, so that brass looking fitting right there, that is an RC01 valve. Now I have not drilled and secured that fitting to the frame right there yet, only because I had a problem with my PTO, which will be coming out in another video, and so I didn't have a way to raise the bed. But I'll be drilling that fitting right there where that hole is, so that it can get secured. But that is an RC01 valve. It keeps residual brake line on everything that is this direction backwards of the truck. And so you can see the back of my cab is right here there. This is on the driver's side. There is a coupler right there, a double flared coupler, and I took that coupler out and put that RC01 valve in there. Now you'll see that I actually bent the brake line inward to the truck, and I did that going back. I'll try to get you a good visual. I did that going all the way back. It's only about 3 feet that I went back, right? But you can see how I kind of bent that out, and I'm going to secure the brake line to the top of that cross member there in a similar fashion that they're secured there, just to keep vibrations and stuff down. That was my way of taking out the slack, because the fitting, unless you cut the brake line and reflare it, and I thought that would be a real pain to flare where it's at. And so I just kind of bent the brake line. I made very careful not to kink it in any way. I put that in there like that. And I think the line will stay there. Like I said, I'm going to drill that fitting right there and secure it with a bolt or some sort of self-tipping metal screw, so that fitting is very secure there. It does not leak. I have it driven the truck, and then I'm going to, right there on top of that cross member, I am going to secure the brake line down to that cross member too, probably some flat stock and 2 bolts on each side, just to kind of pinch it up along that so that it can't vibrate. And that's the same kind of manner at which the rest of the brake lines are secured. So that is how I'm going to secure it, and that's what I did. Like I said, if you want a perfect finish, then what you would have done is probably cut that back, use a flaring tool, and flare a new line. But it was only needed to take an inch of slack out in my case, and so I was able to just kind of bend the line out a little bit, bend it back in, kind of in that fashion, in order to get the line out. And you know, there's no moving parts or anything in that area, so I think it's going to be just fine. But that valve has stopped all of my leaking on my brakes, and I'm very excited about that. So if you have Lucas Girling brakes and you cannot find this valve, this is what they all look like on your brake system, anywhere from the back of the cab to your brakes. Follow your regular standard brake lines. If you can't find that fitting and you have leaking brake lines, replace this or put this valve in. It may solve your problem, it may not, but it will certainly help from the problem coming back. You may have to replace your wheel cylinders or get a back plate, but at least don't get those without first getting this. Either way, it's going to help you either immediately or after you replace the brakes.
So if you have Lucas Girling brakes, make sure you replace that RC01 valve. It's definitely has already helped. I've put maybe 100 miles on the truck since I did that. I haven't seen any seepage, and I was seeing every time I'd go out to the truck, I was seeing seepage. And like I said, it was not gear oil. It was brake fluid, and I was losing about a quart of brake fluid a week. And I don't even drive the truck all day, so it was a pretty good leak. I had totally had plenty of brake pressure and plenty of stopping power. It was just as the truck would sit, the seals would get contracted, and brake fluid would drain out. And so that's why they've invented this RC01 valve, or not invented it. Pressure valves have been around for a while, but that's why they've started using the residual pressure valve on these brake lines. So I hope that's been helpful. I know there's not a lot of videos out on these brake systems, so I hope that that you find it helpful if you're dealing with leaking Lucas Girling brakes. And make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll continue bringing more videos of things around the homestead. Thanks.